Now on YouTube, there is a big focus on success, how I got into Google, how I got this software engineering internship, or even with some of my videos on the resume that got me into Microsoft. But through all of this success, there's a lot of rejections and failures that no one really talks about. So I decided, hey, why don't I talk about it? So here is the resume that didn't get me into Goldman Sachs. So I've talked about this before, but during, I think it was my junior year in college, I started looking at internships at Goldman Sachs. Fortunately, I was able to get in contact with a managing director and sort of send her my resume as sort of like a precursory review. And she absolutely demolished it and ripped it apart. And probably for good reason, because it was pretty bad now looking back at it. And honestly, probably for the better, because I think I needed someone to just tear it apart and be like, hey, this is terrible, redo the entire thing. And that's basically what happened. I didn't have too much experience at the time, and I didn't really know what to include, what to emphasize, but I think it's going to be beneficial to go over to show you, looking back at this resume and realizing maybe why I didn't hear back from too many internships. So fortunately, I was able to find it, and here it is. So again, I did redact some information, some personal information, some information I didn't want to share from this resume, but this is about 90% of all of the content that was on it. And you can already see a staunch difference between the resume that I used when I applied to Microsoft as a full-time or for a full-time position versus this one. So this is what my resume looked like when I applied to Microsoft. Again, a lot cleaner, a lot more professional, really emphasizes the more software engineering side of my experience. Whereas this one kind of just includes past places I've worked, and not everything is super applicable. So I'm going to spend some time roasting it. So again, with knowledge, skills, and abilities at the top, it's also just randomly like bullet pointed. I really don't like this style. I much rather prefer it on my more current resume with just listing the technologies, because you don't really need to use full sentences like fluent in Java and C, but only working knowledge in C++. Like, you're kind of diminishing your skills to a potential recruiter. So if you're comfortable coding in Java, C, and C++, just put Java, C, C++. Also, I heard that you're supposed to put education, at least for new grads, at the top. It was at the bottom for me. I think that was one of the things she called me out for, the managing director at Goldman Sachs. Again, also, some of these bullet points are just really weird that don't need to be included. So like ability to communicate effectively, critical thinking skills, pretty much all of these are kind of givens. Like, do I really need to include this in a software engineering internship application with the ability to communicate effectively and critical thinking skills? Like, probably not really. So that's, amongst many things, that's one thing that's wrong. Now, in terms of experience, I didn't have too much experience at this time, like I mentioned, and the only real applicable sort of software engineering experience in terms of workplace that I had was this government department internship that I've mentioned before, where I did have some software engineering experience through that. So that was a great experience to include on a resume, but literally everything else on here is not applicable at all to software engineering. It's just past work experiences that I had. And that's one thing that I don't think I understood at this point, was to tailor your resume to the position. So rather than just have some broad resume where it says, I worked at American Eagle, that doesn't matter about software engineering at all. I should have had much more side projects. I should have stressed maybe my classes a little bit more to fill up my resume. And I think if you don't have a lot of experience, at least for software engineering, it's way easier to fill up your resume with just side projects. Like, just include, hey, I designed this UX or this website, or I messed around with this app for this one summer, or, I'm in a software engineering student organization and we do competitions. I'm a competitive programmer. Like, those are all really good things to include on a resume. And I did not include anything really that was applicable besides this one internship that I had. And I think that's one of the reasons I didn't hear back from a lot of software engineering internship applications, was my resume was just bad. It was just kind of bad and didn't really have applicable information on it. I could have taken out all of this unnecessary experience here and actually just worked on, one or two solid side projects and just fill my resume with that. So if you're in a similar position in college where maybe you only have a single internship, or you only have a little bit of work experience, or you don't even have any internship experiences, just try to focus on the software engineering side projects or student organizations where you were able to, work with a team in an actual, coding and programming sort of environment. So that's one major tip. If I could go back and say, hey, get rid of this unnecessary experience here, actually work on an applicable side project and include that. And I think I would hear back from way more internships if I actually had, hey, I worked on a, I worked with database schemas, or, I did this machine learning stuff with, Python or whatever, instead of including that I drove for Postmates, because that literally doesn't matter. But we'll keep going through it. I can keep roasting it. So yes, for one summer, I did drive for Postmates. It was actually after my freshman year in college, because I studied abroad for a brief period after my freshman year. I studied for 5 weeks in New Zealand. So basically after I came back, I didn't really know what to do. I just wanted some money, so I decided to drive for Postmates, picked up food, delivered it. It was kind of sucked, to be honest. So this one, the dialysis clinic, I was an independent contractor there. That was the summer after my senior year in high school. So again, just sort of like a high school job before college, just to sort of get some money before going to college. And I basically just like organized files and uploaded documents. Nothing really that was applicable to software engineering again. Just sort of a high school level job. I think this resume was at the beginning of my junior year. From what I remember, if the timeline makes sense, but this is not an impressive resume for a junior, to be honest. That's saying it to myself, like I'm roasting myself here. And again, my junior year of high school, again, another high school job, I just worked at American Eagle. I was just like one of those people that was there. Sales associate at American Eagle, high school job to get money. Again, not applicable to software engineering at all. Like, these are just very, very broad experiences that I don't need to be included at all because they're just not useful. Measuring a candidate's ability in a software engineering internship. So again, really want to emphasize, if you have something like this, I don't want to roast your resume, but I think it would be beneficial. Again, I'm not a recruiter, so, take my opinions with a grain of salt, but I think if you take like non-applicable experiences on your resume, like a Postmates driver, I'm just uploading files, sales associate, take those off, sit down, work on a very solid software engineering side project. And there's a lot of them just on YouTube you could look up, like algorithm visualizers, or join like software engineering student organizations. There's a lot of opportunities to actually fill up your resume. And I think you just have to work on emphasizing the software engineering side of it if you're applying to software engineering internships. And again, if you're applying to, say, a data science position or some other type of specific position, really try to tailor your resume to emphasize your experience that applies to that internship. So again, if you're applying to become a machine learning intern somewhere, emphasize where you've had machine learning experience if you've had it. Maybe the classes where you've gone over it, or the side projects you've done that involve machine learning. So I think that's one major tip that I hope you get out of this, is to really tailor your resume to the position and try to cut out the, non-applicable information. And sort of the last section, I actually think I had a bottom section here that said organization. So if you had any applicable student organizations that you were a part of that you think would be valuable on a resume, I would include it at the bottom again if you can fit it. But in education, again, I just had my University of California, San Diego. I'm pretty sure this section should be at the top, at least for new grads. Also, my major on here is incredibly tiny, mathematics and computer science. I might want to emphasize that a little bit more since my resume doesn't actually show too much computer science or software engineering experience. Maybe I want to emphasize that, hey, I'm actually taking math and computer science classes to sort of fill in those gaps. At this time, I had a 3.45 GPA, not terrible. I think I graduated with a little over a 3.5. I also included my high school, which I don't think you really need to do. I just felt like I needed something else to include on here, so I wanted to show that, hey, I was in the top 10% of my class. I had a 4.0 GPA in high school, but by the time I was a junior in college, or like end of sophomore year, I don't need to include a high school diploma if I'm a junior in college. But that's sort of what my resume looked like. That didn't get me into Goldman Sachs, and got absolutely ripped apart, probably for good reason, as you can see. So after I gave this resume to the managing director, she said, "This is pretty terrible. She didn't say it directly like that, but she said, hey, this is pretty bad. And she told me to see if I could go to a career center to sort of, just revise it, put it in a more traditional format. So that's what I did. I went to the UCSD Career Center, took this resume, copy pasted relevant information, reworded things, reformatted things, and eventually ended up with a resume that sort of looked like this. Obviously without some other experiences, because I started those after I did this, but it was in relatively the same format. And as you can see, my current resume, or the resume that I ended up applying to Microsoft with, is just generally a lot cleaner. It's, it looks a lot nicer, it's a lot better formatted, a lot more consistent. The information on here is a lot more applicable to specifically software engineering positions. I include 2 side projects that deal with either, program management, entrepreneurial, or software engineering type topics. I include 2 of my internship experiences, education at the top, skills are much more concise. So I think this resume is way, way better than this one. And again, I could have taken out a lot of non-applicable information and try to work on some actual side projects. I hope that was useful. I hope that you found this information, me going through my old resume and absolutely roasting it, that you got some useful tips. Work on some side projects, maybe volunteer at some student organizations, maybe try to join lab, talk to a professor to see if they have any research that they're doing that you could potentially help and maybe do some, grunt work or do some citations on. Anything like that can sort of fill up your resume with actually applicable information. That's all from me. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any suggestions for future videos, comment them down below. My name is Michael. We do bad British accents at the end of every video. Check out one of my past videos. My past self would thank you dearly. And check out one of my future videos. My future self would also thank you dearly. We make college advice, career advice, tech, and computer science content on this channel. If any of that sounds interesting, consider subscribing to the channel and liking this video to help your boy out with the YouTube algorithm. Again, if you like minimalist programmer merch, check out some of the shirts I've been designing at nullref.co. This is one of them. It says multi-threaded. That's kind of a little joke, multi-threaded as in it's a shirt, it has threads, but then also multi-threading in programming. Think about it. Hopefully I see you in another one. Bye-bye.